Hey, Britt, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
And thank you so much for doing this. So, Britt, I've been following you on Instagram for ages, and I just love the clarity and precision of your work. And in your posts, you always put the here it is, here's what's happening, and then you put what do we do instead? What's the antidote? What is the alternative, which I absolutely love. And so I contacted you because I saw one of your posts and was really, really drawn to the theme of it. So I really wanted to discuss that with you today. So, Britt, I'm going to quote you whilst you're here so that everyone knows what we're talking about. So your post said, telling a traumatic story in chronological order can intensify the trauma that the telling of the story is supposed to help heal. And I really wanted to talk to you about the details of this because in women's circles, sharing stories is welcome, it's promoted, and there's often space to share just whatever you want. And this can be, not always, but can be really triggering and difficult with no structure and no guidance. So can you tell us why telling a traumatic story in chronological order can intensify the trauma?
When I learned this, it was so mind-blowing. I think intuitively we know that there's a point at which telling a story doesn't work at best and re-traumatizes us at worst. I mean, I tell people all the time, if all you needed to do to heal was to tell your story, you'd feel better after telling it. And yet many of us, myself included, have noticed that we tell our trauma stories over and over and over and over again, and we don't feel any better. And it's a delicate balance because telling a story in the presence of a safe, empathic witness is good medicine. But like we were chatting about before the recording, like any medicine, you can overdose if you take too much of it. You can do damage if you take it improperly. And sometimes it's not the right medicine for the job. So in short, telling a story from start to finish can often put our brain exactly back in that traumatic space. And rather than healing, we're actually deepening the neural groove that was formed by the trauma. And so for women's circles, because telling stories and holding space is so vital and so important, we want to do it skillfully and safely.
Okay, so you talked about intensifying the groove in the brain. Is that one of the things that happens when we're talking about our trauma story, particularly in chronological order?
It can. And this is not, I'll always preface this. This is not an always every time for every person. If telling your story makes you feel better and lighter, great. So this message isn't necessarily for you in that moment. But often I see women and I know women and I am a woman who does this. And I tell my story over and over again and it becomes a rumination. You know, the word ruminate comes from cows chewing and we chew and we chew and we chew on the story and it doesn't go anywhere. It gets sludgy and it sort of just exists. So when I have a client that's telling me a trauma narrative, I always have them skip around. And this is something that they teach in somatic experiencing or somatic or body-based psychotherapy. You skip around. So you may start at the beginning and then you jump to later in the story. And then you go back to the beginning and then you go back to the end. And a really great question for if you're holding space for someone's story is, when did you know it was over? Or when did you know you felt safe? Because what people are fascinated with is, oh my God, what happened next? And you'll never guess what happened next. And we stare at the car wreck on the side of the road and we freeze in the face of fire and chaos. What we need to actually say is, when was it over? Oh, wow, that sounds terrible. How did you know that you were safe? When did you come out of that? Who helped you out of that? And that is not a question that we are taught to ask. We're taught to go, oh my gosh, let's make it bigger and let's fan the flames of this story. Sharing a story is intended to take the flames and put them out. And by intensifying and fanning the flame, we make it worse versus asking fire hosey questions like, oh my gosh, that's amazing that you survived that. What qualities about yourself enabled you to survive that? That's a beautiful question to be able to ask someone if you're holding space for them.
Wow, I can imagine that stops the narrative just straight away and then switches the focus into, oh, something else. Wow, I've got some resources rather than being stuck in, oh my God, I was there and I still feel there.
Exactly. It actually shifts your brain activity from the reactive sort of survival, fight, flight physiology into more of our neocortex, our thinking brain. And exactly like you said, it's really amazing. So for anyone listening to this, here's your experiment. When someone's telling you anything from, they had a car accident or they had a terrible travel or whatever, ask them, wow, when did you know you felt safe? They will freeze. They will stop in their tracks. Their face will tilt and they'll go, huh? Huh? Huh. And then you'll see them actually breathe. You'll see breath go, because that kind of a question actually shifts us into more of a parasympathetic orientation. And you'll see them tilt their head. You'll see them go, huh? And you'll see them breathe. It's wild and it works. It's crazy.
Fantastic. I'm going to put that in big, bold letters in the show notes so that we can all remember it and go try it out.